A very good morning and welcome. It's your day starter here. It's Daybreak on Trust TV. I'm Sagir Ibrahim. I hope your morning is up to a good start and you've gotten that cup of coffee, tea, or most likely your favorite beverage. We have a lot packed in store for you. But before I delve into all of the packages and all of the fun-filled activities that will be engaging you this morning, well, I'm not alone in the studio. Good morning, my dear.
Good morning.
Always a delight to have my dear with me in the studio.
Okay, I think I feel the same way as well.
You think? Okay. But then again, Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. That is the theme of the 21st Trust Dialogue, which held here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, on Thursday, the 25th of January. And of course, a lot of issues affecting Nigeria and Nigerians were discussed because we had in attendance a lot of top government functionaries and, of course, members of the civil society and other members, of the Nigerian public and indeed, by extension, the African public who came and, proffered suggestions, solutions, and recommendations to all of the challenges, especially relating to the economy faced by Nigeria and Nigerians. Hopefully, we see changes after the dialogue. What's it been, 21 years since the dialogue started?
21 years, and democracy now is 24 years. 24. Let's just say a little above, the democracy.
Just a 3 years difference.
And then we're doing this every year, non-stop, regardless of the situation, and it's been amazing. The feedback sometimes is crazy, it's overwhelming, and we hope that this time around, because of the economic hardship a lot of Nigerians are going through, we hope that this gets to the president and something is done as soon as possible.
Well, I don't know your favorite part of the dialogue, but for me, what caught my attention was the call by Nigeria and Nigerians to have an indices through which they can measure the performance of their ministers. This way they know whether they have done well or not. Of course, you know that there's a special advisor to the president on the coordination of the economy, and also coordination of activity. I've forgotten the name of the office particularly, but I know that office is responsible for coordinating the activities of these ministers and thereby creating an indices through which we could check and also assess them. This is important because, there's been complaints and concerns about ministers not fulfilling their mandates or meeting expectations with regards to their deliverables, and yet they're left in office and Nigerians, the generality of Nigerians are left to suffer the consequences of that.
Is headed by Hadiza Bala. And
yes, Hadiza Bala Usman
did speak about if ministers do not perform. That's a directive from the president. They will be sacked. And
it's good statement that it was re-echoed in the 21st Trust Dialogue. But then again, let's not give you all of the details for now. Let's take the headlines, starting with this one. British company ranks Lagos above Dubai, Miami, Singapore, others. Interesting with regards to tourism.
Exactly, and then we have the price of our rise of by 81% in the 2023 MBS.
Also, customs intercept cocaine arms worth 4 billion naira. And finally, Sokoto PDP accepts Supreme Court verdict on governorship poll. And to details now, British media and hospitality company Time Out has ranked Lagos above Melbourne, Australia, Naples, Italy, Singapore, Miami, the US, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Beijing, China, Montreal, Canada, among others, in its best cities to visit list. It ranked New York City as #1 city in the world, while South Africa's Cape Town placed second in the list that contained 50 cities. The firm, which ranked Lagos as the 19th best city to visit in the world, said it drew its conclusion from a survey of more than 20,000 city dwellers around the world, along with its network of editors. The criteria used to rate the cities include food, quality and affordability, culture, nightlife, how the city makes people feel, strong community vibes, access to green space, historic sites, and much more. And in another story, the Nigerian Customs Service, Tin Can Island Command, said it intercepted cocaine, arms and ammunition worth 4.3 billion naira. The Controller General of Customs, Bashir Adeni, disclosed this while addressing journalists during the handing over of the seized contraband at the command on Thursday. Adeni said that the seized contraband came from South Africa and Canada. He added that the command also intercepted Colorado indica weighing 32.5 kilograms. The customs boss added that 40 packets of substances weighing 39.7 kilograms confirmed to be cocaine, 1,026 packets weighing 688.2 kilograms confirmed to be Colorado indica, 2 pistols without serial numbers, 1 pistol with a serial number, 3 empty magazines, 275 rounds of 5.5 millimeters M16 Tavor live ammunition, 6 rounds of 9 millimeters blank ammunition seized from 140-foot container. Among others, imported from Durban, South Africa, were also seized. The CGC said that the total seized substances were 56.39 kilograms of cocaine valued at 2.3 billion naira and 955 kilograms of Colorado indica valued at 1.9 billion naira, all with a street value of 4.3 billion. Adeni stressed that the collaborative efforts with the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency have proven effective in pooling resources and intelligence to safeguard the nation's borders. And finally, the People's Democratic Party in Sokoto State has received a Supreme Court ruling on its petition against the 2023 governorship election in the state with utmost respect for the outcome of the process. The party, in a Thursday statement signed by the Publicity Secretary, Hassan Sahabi, and made available to our correspondent, said a law-abiding political party, the PDP recognizes the judiciary as a constitutional arbiter on issues regarding elections in our nation. The party further urges its members to remain committed to the progress of the PDP as our party dedicates itself to playing its role in the democratic governance of our dear state. It also prays for a stronger, greater Sokoto State and Nigeria where peace and progress shall reign. The Apex Court affirmed Ahmed Aliyu as the Sokoto State Governor. Reading the lead judgment, Justice Tijani Abubakar dismissed the appeal by the PDP and its governorship candidate, Seidu Umar, agreeing with the reasoning of the court below. Earlier in October 2023, the Sokoto State Governorship Elections Petitions Tribunal affirmed Aliyu's election. The 3-man panel on the tribunal, led by Justice Haruna Michelia, in its ruling dismissed the petition of PDP's Umar. He was challenging the victory of the governor in the March 18 governorship poll. And ahead of the governorship primary election slated for February in Edo State, major political parties and their aspirants are putting their houses in order in readiness for the exercise. Stakeholders have also called on the leadership of participating parties to conduct free, fair and credible primaries to pick the standard bearers. Jonathan Awanye completes the report.
As political parties in Edo State prepare for primaries slated for February amid candidates jostling for patronage, stakeholders have called on the various party leadership to ensure a transparent primary ahead of the 2024 election. Ogboloy Kelly, the state chairman of the Labour Party, in an interview with Trust TV, said no fewer than 30 aspirants are positioning themselves to get the ticket of the party.
We have about 31 of them, and we look forward to see how much we can felicitate with ourselves and see how we can arrive at the manageable size of the number we have. We are looking at bringing the aspirants together, discussing with them, because they are already members of the party. So we must sit together, discuss our issues and find a way around it. So the first step is to ensure that the aspirants are fully engaged, they are reaching themselves, they are discussing. So at the end of the day, we will get to be able to summarize on something. That is the step we have taken so far.
Aspirants said that they are looking forward to a process that will be transparent, as democracy is based on popular participation.
The indirect primaries for me is something that I think that it's a good thing, because you are able to talk to the delegates, and I believe that the delegates know where it hurts. They know exactly what the issues are, and I believe that having been through the 18 local governments, I have voiced my opinion. I have told them that all they need is to give a woman a chance. And I believe that that hope, that aspiration, that dream of a Edo will be achievable.
We are prepared for the forthcoming governorship election. And of course, you can see that we are set. So that is what I tell you for now.
Stakeholders believe that a free and fair primary will ensure justice, equity, and peace among delegates and party members. Jonathan Awai, Trust TV News, Benin City.
And 38 persons arrested for alleged violence protests have been granted bail by a chief magistrate court in Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital. And Abubakar Abdullahi reports that the suspects were arrested while protesting against the Supreme Court judgment that affirmed the victory of Abdullahi Sule as authentic winner of last year's governorship election in the state. His report is presented here in our studio.
It would be recalled that the Supreme Court judgment that validated the election of Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule triggered protest by the members of opposition People's Democratic Party in Lafia, the state capital. These protesters were arrested and prosecuted by the police over alleged unlawful assembly and public disturbance. After taking their plea, the court remanded them at the Lafia Correctional Service Center. At the resumption of hearing, counsel to the defendant, Ayiwulu Baba, applied for bail and promised that if granted, his client would be available at any time for the trial. The application was not opposed by the prosecutor, who is the State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Labaran Magaji. Ruling on the bail application, Chief Magistrate Muhammad Lanzi granted them bail on the condition that they must provide a surety who is a director in the state or federal civil service, and a written undertaking that there would be of good conduct during the trial. Counsels to the parties spoke to Trust TV after the court session.
The mantra of this administration under His Excellency Engineer Abdullahi Sule, that the rule of law will always take the front seat, irrespective of whatever anybody feel about it. So we came to this court, devoid of any sentiment or emotion. We observed that all the offenses alleged were bailable, and we withdrew all the the counter affidavit filed by the police, and we urged the court to grant them bail in the interest of justice.
We feel the court is just, because bail, though is a constitutional right, was solely at the discretion of the court. So it is justice to allow one who is just accused of committing an offense to go on bail because he is presumed innocent. So keeping him in prison before trial would be tantamount to serving imprisonment before trial. So what happened at the end of the day if he's exonerated? So to my mind, I feel justice is served.
The case has been adjourned to 27th February 2024.
And the retired police officers in Kaduna State have again staged a peaceful protest against their continuous inclusion in the contributory pension scheme. At the protest on Thursday, the protesters appealed to relevant authorities to address their demands. That's the report.
These protesters are not happy that they are part of the contributory pension scheme, which they say is subjecting them to untold hardship after retirement from the service. They are therefore demanding their exit from the system.
Under the scheme, have been facing series of difficulties ranging from non-able to feed well. Most of our children have been driven away from schools. We cannot be able to cater for their school fees. Many things. If defined benefit is a disaster, we the police retirees under the contributory pension, we are 100% ready to be under the defined benefit system.
One of the protesters, Esther Marcos, said her entitlement, which is nothing to write home about, as it cannot cater for her needs, has been worsened by the scheme.
Government to do is we want a total exit from this scam. This is wickedness. Our police retirees are dying by the day. How can you, somebody like me that is collecting a DSP in the police, is still collecting 40,000 naira for the past 4 years? 40,000, there is no increase, nothing to write home about. 40,000. With the way that things have moved, things are increasing by the day. You are still paying me the same 40,000. How do you want me to survive?
The retirees also expressed dismay with the rate at which serving police personnel are dying due to insecurity in the country and call on the federal government to address the menace. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
That's all we have for the packages, at least for now. Let's take a quick breather. When we come back, we'll start the discussion here on Daybreak. Stay with us.
Why did you develop this reputation as somebody who is difficult to work with?
I will tell the truth. No matter whose ox is worn, I will say exactly how it is.
This is why I actually sympathize with commissioners of nowadays. Where a commissioner sometimes is just a picture. You find somebody, even a cleaner and the governor's wife, can interfere with their abilities.
Even the ministers, there are very many who respected me, simply because I never complained about them. I never went to ask for a favor. Never.
So none of that has happened?
Nothing.
But if it hasn't happened, do you have hope that now another government coming in?
There's no hope.
So you've given up on politics?
I've given up. It's gone, it's gone.
Retrenchment from work is the most hated thing by unions. It's loss of job means that is loss of life, in fact, for civil servants at that time.
Nigeria's economy, Nigeria's security, Nigeria's intelligence. This is what the materials we were handling. And I thought government would be very interested.
The reasons why you adopted federalism is not because of finesse, not because you like it. It's because of its functional utility.
The 21st Daily Trust Dialogue, coupled with the presentation of the African of the Year Award, focused on the theme Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. Well, the occasion started with Kabiru Yusuf, chairman of the board of directors of Media Trust Group, setting the stage for the discussion, addressing contemporary issues such as the war in Gaza and the state of Nigeria's economy under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Championing the occasion, former Minister of National Planning, Shamsuddin Usman, endeavored to reconcile the Tinubu administration's policy direction with the current economic realities in the country. The consensus emerged that although premature to definitively judge the success or failure of Tinubu's reforms, early indicators suggest a disconnect between policy options and also current realities, necessitating a more realistic approach. Well, for us to get in-depth analysis on the issues raised and possible solutions, we're joined in the studio by the Deputy Editor-in-Chief at the Daily Trust, Dr. Suleiman. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
First of all, Doctor, I can see from your eyes that the stress is really wearing you.
It's
Doctor,
fine.
First, how was the event? But before you answer that question, let's get excerpts from the dialogue yesterday.
The 21st Daily Trust Dialogue, coupled with the presentation of the African of the Year Award, focused on the theme, Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. Kabir Yusuf, chairman of the board of directors, Media Trust Group, set the stage for the discussion, addressing contemporary issues such as the war on Gaza and the state of Nigeria's economy under President Bola Tinubu.
The socio-economic challenges of this country are mounting, and I think they're even becoming more daunting. The promises by politicians are getting more creative. But to judge by the results, the more things are supposed to change, the more they have remained the same.
Championing the occasion, former Minister of National Planning Shamsuddin Usman endeavored to reconcile the Tinubu administration's policy direction with the current economic realities in the country.
On the face of it, it looks like the average Nigerian seems to be the loser of that policy. But who is the winner? Certainly not indicate, because they've lost that bit of business, even though some of them are still importing and selling in the unregulated market and making money.
While the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, was notably absent, President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and Dr. Victoria Akai extensively addressed the theme, with participants adding their voices to the conversation.
If you check even the pronouncement this year, you hear that they have budgeted 1.8 trillion as subsidy for the power sector. Meanwhile, the power sector was privatized at the cost of 400 billion. That was what they sold the then NEPA. And then you subsidize it with 1.8 trillion in a year. A personal business, you sold your house for 2 million and you are giving the person 10 million to repair it. That is prodigal economy.
I extracted some gains, improved that the Nigerian economy is growing at a faster pace, 3.3% compared to the population growth. Nigeria's oil production rose to 9.16% to an average of about 1.3 million barrels per day in 2023.
And economics everywhere in the world developed by production. And production is a function of capital. You have to invest. And the policies you are putting up is shrinking those capital. You are increasing tax. How capital can be developed and invest for production?
It's not all gloomy. It's not all emergency. Of course, if you have an immediate shock, it is important that you have a first aid, kind of, before a long-term solution is being provided.
The consensus emerged that although premature to definitively judge the success or failure of Tinubu's reforms, early indicators suggest a disconnect between policy options and current economic realities, necessitating a more realistic approach. The highlight of the event was the presentation of the African of the Year Award to Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, facilitated through the South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Shafiu Suleiman.
Well, that was excerpts from the dialogue yesterday. Doctor, Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. I think the dialogue made it quite clear who the losers were. So, what next for Nigerians?
First of all, I would not say that the dialogue made it quite clear who the Nigerians were, because the dialogue itself does not take a position. It is the position of those who are invited to come and speak there. And several spoke their minds about who are the losers and who are the gainers. I moderated the event.
You did a good job doing that.
Thank you very much.
That was a yeoman's job.
So that puts me in a vantage position to hear all sides of the argument. And I think we can't say for sure that this particular groups are losers or gainers. But the Comrade Joe Ajaero, he was very clear that those in government are already gaining because they are able to transport themselves to work. They are able to pay for basic things that they need, even with a high cost, without any stress. On the other hand, Nigerians, when going to work, they face even more challenges than they did before. So for him, it's clear to see that Nigerians, the masses are the losers. Those whose 35% is it 35,000 naira wage increase have not been paid. Those who palliatives, either in transport or in conditional cash transfers have not received anything, or in terms of food, and so on. But also there was another theme there, which is that 7 months, it is far too few, too short, to be able to tell whether even the masses are going to remain losers or are going to be losers. Because government reforms sometimes take time to yield the desired fruits. So maybe later on, at some later point in time, like one of the panelists, Dr. Victoria Akai, was trying to project, that there are good indications at present that the near future is going to be better. But even that position was not left free. There were others who also criticized that position. So on the whole, I would say that all the sides had an opportunity to say how they think or what they feel about the government's economic reforms.
All right. Doctor, the NLC president mentioned that the bane of Nigeria's problems is the fuel subsidy removal, which translated the price of fuel from its initial 187 naira to around 700 naira. And he says until some of these issues around subsidy removal are addressed, Nigerians will continue to suffer. However, there was also calls to ensure that ministers, there is a mechanism to check and assess performances of ministers to ensure that they meet up with their mandate. Seeing that the president and his body language since he got into office has been one who has stated clearly, if you don't perform as a minister, you will leave the cabinet. Would you say it is one that would yield some of these results that and recommendations that were raised during the dialogue?
Thank you. First of all, I will start with the last question, which is the president. That's about the KPI, that is key performance indicators. That if you don't measure up, for example, if you don't turn up to work tomorrow or next tomorrow, there will be consequences, and so on. And in Nigeria, government officials don't have that system of consequences for not performing, even when they turn up to work. We want more than just turning up to work. We want to see that the policies that they are doing are actually working and people are benefiting from them. It is good for the president to say that, but I will not clap for the president yet, merely on account of saying that. We have had retreats for federal ministers, for government officials, where these kind of statements have been made previously, but to take action, when there is a need to take action, that has always been quite benign. The president has indicated, for example, with the Better Edu scandal, that he is happy to show people the way out, which is not the case in our recent past, which wasn't the case in our recent past. So that's a good thing. But if you left to me, I would say that the body language coming out of more than 50% of the ministries right now, that body language is not much encouraging. So where there is really some enthusiasm to show people the door if they are not performing, we should have seen some more talk, even without anybody getting sacked, because 1 year is still it's not much time to start saying somebody has failed in an office, but at least you see some talk from the president, directed at the ministers, which in turn can make them to now also double efforts, get serious about what they are doing. There are many ministers that you have not heard of them since the day they were appointed, meaning that they have just been since the day, they were sworn in, So whereas it's good to have performance indicators, some mechanism for measuring and rewarding or punishing performance, because that's all presidents need to do. You don't have to do everything yourself.
Indeed.
Maybe, that's to get the right people and then give them reward if they are doing well, or punish them if they are not doing well. It's as simple as that's what the job requires.
And that's what makes it a democracy.
It's not a job for a nice person. It's a job for the right person.
Just like the SFs actually pointed out, we're expecting the Minister of Coordinating Economy to be there. at least we could have gotten a glimpse of, when the losers and the gainers will be maybe in the next 7 months. But we didn't get one reason or the other, he wasn't there. But we had other government officials who were there talking about.
No. It's good that other government officials were there, but they were not the ones invited to be part of the panel. It is the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy that was invited to come and present the government's case, as it were, if they truly understand it up there. It is quite unfortunate, I have to be honest with you, and it reflects the kind of attitude that people in government have towards Nigerians, that because he didn't send an apology, he didn't send a representative. You could have sent a junior minister, you could have sent the PAMSEC, to make your presentation, you could have sent somebody, anyone in government, any senior person that's in government, and especially that you knew that the chairman of the event was a former Minister of Finance, was also a former Minister of National Planning, was a Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. So that the idea of peer-to-peer was already established. You can't say that a former Minister of Finance, the position you are now holding, somebody who did it like 10, 15 years before you, or somebody who was a Deputy Governor. You can't say the Wale's CV does not in any way match the CV of the chairman of the event. So even for respect for that, for him, the chairman, you turn up. But more importantly, you turn up to come and make the government's case.
Indeed.
It gives you an opportunity to even frame the topic and reframe it in a different way.
For accountability now? Because
and how is it looking for this administration, especially because we're talking about issues of performance and not living up to expectation, and then there's this.
So frankly, for me, that's part of performance. Frankly, because we're in a democracy. You understand? There's nothing special about him or special about Suleiman. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not a military government. Indeed. He is in his position because of our democratic process. That process encompasses so many things, and these many things must also be respected. One of these things is to be invited to come and make a case against government. You see, U.S. presidential candidates, U.S. presidents, U.S. ministers, secretaries of state, and so on and so forth, speaking to or making a case about their positions to maybe less than 50 people or less than 30 people in a town hall, because they know that the message will go beyond that town hall, to across the country. But more than that, because they know that democracy demands it. Democracy is is a system of persuasion. So it's not a system where people can feel like, okay, they are above this or above that. I don't know his excuses. And perhaps he might have some good excuses, but not communicating them. Not communicating them by protocol, demonstrates disrespect, not just to the media organization, but to Nigerians.
A lot of Nigerians.
To Nigerians, whose platform that we represent.
So
that's
most of the
and
issues
it's not alone. That's how generally government officials behave. That's still colonial mentality, that if we're in government, therefore we're everybody else. That's nonsense. If you're in government, you are still a citizen. You have to be a citizen first before you can be in government.
Do you think that after the dialogue, because of the absence of the minister or the coordinating minister of economics, do you think that a lot of things are left on the table and begging for answers?
Absolutely. Look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, as you did the review earlier. Cool. The paper is leading with the position of Labour. The chances are that, because news differs to status, always. So chances are that if the minister had been there and made a case, chances are that the paper would be leading with his own position first.
Most likely.
Most likely. Before going to, what the Labour says or what other people at the meeting say. But he didn't say, he didn't even turn up in the first place, which is a story in its own right that should have been told, because people cannot give their word. If you are in government, you don't have the luxury of giving your word and then not turning up and not having any explanation for that. So what that means is that he helped to leave the government open to attack in the public space. Indeed. And this sort of things are among those things that build onto how Nigerians and citizens and voters, find or form their impressions about government. And ultimately, this sort of things building into elections and votes and defeats and successes at election.
Well, in his absence, they discussed other issues around the economy, key of which is fixing loopholes in forex policy, the likes of trying to meet up with the inflation figures that has been rising above, the grasp of a lot of Nigerians and the likes of that. Interestingly, if he was there, he would have been able to speak, through the side of the government and perhaps the CBN. But then again, he's not there. And the questions around how these issues would be addressed, remains open. But doctor, do you think that this absence, in some cases or some reasons, worsens the perception that Nigerians have, of the government, of this administration, and their seriousness towards addressing these issues that were discussed at the time?
Thank you. I rather find it unfortunate, because you are certainly right. There is an issue of perception here. Unfortunately, the perception, when you say government, you just mean the man at the head of the government. So you mean the president himself. But he is not the president. He is an appointee of the president who is to drive an objective of the president. I hope he shows that he understands that clearly, because by not turning up, he doesn't show that he does understand it. Because what this means, the president himself is using his own offices, his own opportunities to communicate a different message to Nigerians. And I hope that Nigerians get that perception, which is that he is somebody who listens. I don't know Tinubu from heaven or from Adam or from where. I've never met him. I would be entirely happy to live the rest of my life without having to meet him. So, but the idea is that in the past few months, he has taken certain actions that demonstrate that he listens to Nigerians. When somebody, I've written this in my column, when Nigerians show anger towards a decision that he has taken, he has shown some readiness to backtrack from that decision. For example, when people say, how can you appoint a 24-year-old to come and be the chairman of it? He withdrew the young man. When people say, the cost of governance, you can't travel to COP with 1,000 people. He made a declaration, an announcement that, no, stop this. Make, only 6 people, 10, 15 people with myself, vice president, first ladies, and the wife of the vice president, all of them, 5 people. Even the statement is significant, because it will give limitations to how much people can act, with regard to Western Nigeria's money on foreign trips, or even domestic ones. And then many situations like that, better edu. When people say, she has to be suspended, he agreed. So that is the impression that the president is creating about himself by his own actions, the perception that he wants Nigerians to have about him and his government. But some of his appointees, like we saw yesterday, are now working counter to that. Despite in my opinion, that is, despite this fact. Because it's fine for a minister is not you or me, let's be honest. So it is possible that even having given his word, something urgent can come up. We can understand that. But you have to communicate with the organizers of the event. And if you do, you are showing respect not to the organizers necessarily, but to Nigerians that they represent. The platform is for Nigerian public. It's not for Daily Trust, per se.
Doctor, yesterday during the panel session with Joe Ajaero and also Dr. Victoria Okai, Joe Ajaero said something that pricked my attention. He said that Nigeria is an underdeveloping country, and he said that unapologetically. And that's because, he thinks that Nigeria has lost itself. We've lost our glory days, and we need to do something now. Or
it just gets out of hand.
Thank you.
Do you align with that thought?
Not necessarily. About first of all, he asked a question earlier, which you helped to bring my mind to. You see, Joe Ajero was the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress at the time the fuel subsidy was removed. Two things happened during that process. Number one, there has never been a time in the history of Nigeria when, because he said something significant also, which is that fuel subsidy simply means increase in the price of fuel, which is a fact, you know. But at the time, this time around, in June last year, when fuel subsidy was removed, two things happened that don't have any precedence in Nigeria, as far as fuel subsidy history is concerned. The first time is that it was the very first time that we saw that much of a jump between today's prices and tomorrow's prices. He himself said it, from 187, which was the official, you can even say 195, which we all know what we were buying, to 517 naira, 520, 550, you know, immediately in 1 hour. That's like 3 times, you know, what the price was today. There's never been, at a spot, there's never been a time in the history of, you know, you can move from 95 to 145 to 130. Prices. You can add 80 naira, you can add 50 naira or 100 naira, but we've never had a situation where 300 naira plus or 350 naira plus, that is double the current price, was added onto that current price at once in Nigeria. It's never happened before. That's number one. Interestingly, you know, I was moderator yesterday, so my opinion doesn't count. You understand, you know, so interestingly, it was also the first time that there was no pushback, no serious and significant pushback from Labour. Labour under Joe Ajero that same day, that same time. The problem is the media in Nigeria. They really have to understand that it is not just the government that they need to hold to account or that should be held to account, but other players in the system should also be held to account, including Labour and Labour leaders, including even citizens.
All right. Interestingly, let's take excerpts from President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, who spoke at the 21st Daily Trust Dialogue.
Thank you.
And some of them seem to be emergency policies. I'm not going to talk critically on all the economic policies. I'm going to talk on how it affects the common man on the street. And that is what concerns me. And by the time the topics were given, the winners and the gainers, you knew the winners and the gainers. That was why you brought me here as the losers, representing the losers. So as a representative of the losers, I will talk from that perspective, so that this debate will balance. I don't intend to read, but let me just look at what I call reforms. I say reforms are any kind. Reforms of any kind comes with an acceptance that the existing order has become ineffective and inefficient, thus needs to be rejigged for greater performance. It is this acceptance that creates the urgency for reform. In any case, reforms are expected to produce better results or outcomes for the people. If not, it becomes deformation.
That was the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress and by extension, the representative of the losers, like he said.
No, but that's precisely my point. He and his office and their performance at the time that the subsidy was announced were part of what makes Nigerians to become losers, as he now says. Because at all times in the history, yes, because they were, okay, we'll do strike next 3 weeks. We'll do strike next 3 weeks, until the issue became Nigerians, you know, just got used to it.
So you think that wasn't a good approach at all?
No. Every time that government had increased fuel in Nigeria, astronomically, the Labour had always masked government immediately and swiftly. And that swiftness helps the government, and I mean to mobilize the people on the side of Labour, and then gives Labour a case, then making government to at least reduce the cost. So perhaps we could have had, instead of paying 660 that he's talking about now, or 700, maybe 400, maybe 300.
Did you think that the palliatives that was suggested or given to some quarter, because I didn't receive palliative, so did you think that it doused the tension during the time Labour was to take action?
It only actually got things worse, because a lot of people didn't get, because government itself did not prepare to deliver these palliatives systematically. They gave most of the palliatives to the states. If you give something to a state governor, you are saying that it should be managed according to his own whims. You know,
when you look
Doctor,
at
once again, apologies. Would you describe the reaction and the coping mechanisms of Nigerians as the reason why we found ourselves in this situation? Because, like you said, the government had increased the price of the petrol, come the removal of the fuel subsidy, and it was met with an outright rejection from Labour initially. But the trivialization of the issues subsequently made it lose steam, and Nigeria, some way, somehow, just decided to keep up and be resilient and continue with their life. Somebody in a book that I'm reading, How Nigerians Are Self-Organizing People, described Nigerians as anti-fragile, which means that Nigerians find a way to thrive inside and outside of really dire and difficult situation. Would you say this is the reason why the government has been able to get away with this?
That's good thinking, you know, and I like that idea. Whether it's necessarily a good thing for building a democratic or democratic governance in the country, I don't know. Because citizens have to be able to say, we don't want this.
And stay on it.
And stay on it. So if you cannot endure, because what that means is people not necessarily, you can see that, you can call it some kind of resilience to be able to thrive or survive despite situations, but it also undermines collective resolve.
Exactly, Doctor, and the question of whether it's sustainable.
Yes, to stay on point on certain things, you know. It's what we saw with the End SARS movement. It could have solved achieved something quite concrete if they had been able to stay on point. And people have done it around the world. How do you think the Americans now have votes? I mean, black Americans now have votes. How do you think they are still not slaves? How do you think, you understand, you know, people had to bear suffering in order to have a better opportunity tomorrow. But if you say no, because my family, I need food for tomorrow, then we all have to.
Doctor, pardon me for coming back to the question of the minister's absence. It's really concerning because the president was given a mandate which he intends to deliver to the people according to him. Absolutely. And that mandate, by extension, was given to a minister who is supposed to be a representative in trust to the people. And unfortunately, the minister was not there to,
I would say at this point, let's not overflog the minister. Because we haven't heard his explanation still. The thing that is wrong there is not necessarily that, because the minister, he can ask somebody to, even if he sends his special assistant, we will treat the special assistant as the minister.
Like it were him.
You understand, you know? But it is not having that response, not having that communication, even a text message, I'm sorry, I'm held up, that would have been enough. Then we would tell Nigerians that this is what has happened, you know? And we will know what, because throughout we kept expecting that it is possible he can just come at any moment. So we left the seat open, you know, even though we could have easily asked, for example, the presidential advisor on economic matters in the office of the vice president, Dr. Tobe Fashua, who was there to stand in, and speak in his own capacity, but speak on behalf of the government. We could have made that change right there and then. But we kept hoping and expecting that the minister will come at any point. But like I said, I think we shouldn't overflog that. Let's wait and hear whatever explanations may have been.
Okay, just to make it clear, the minister wasn't there, but we had a lot of professionals who were really interested in the conversation. And if you missed that broadcast and you weren't there physical, and then you really missed a lot. But coming to that, watching the program yesterday, because I had to candidate from the studio, and I saw a lot of professionals who are willing. People in government, past personnel in government were present, and that is an indication that Nigerians are very interested in the economic reforms, and it's really biting hard. And one of the things that was pointed out, of course, was the fact that we do not have a middle class in this country anymore because of this fuel subsidy and some of the economic reforms has really taken that out.
Of course,
and
we
it has
have a middle class. I don't like Nigerians speaking this
now, what do you think that this means now? Because we are interested, professionals are interested, the ordinary Nigerians are interested in this conversation. What does this mean moving forward?
Thank you. I have to address this issue of middle class. All of us here are in the middle class, one way or the other. Yes, because our incomes, particularly you guys, our incomes ensure that we stay above poverty level, even if we don't accumulate stupendous
wealth. Doctor has put us on a very high pedestal.
Exactly. Somebody will like, we're thinking, okay,
but
maybe.
Frankly, there are middle classes in Nigeria. Last year we attended, what's it called? 2022, attended the Lagos Business School Senior Management. Everybody there can be called middle class, and we're in hundreds, and so on. So the idea that the middle is just, we like generalizations sometimes without facts to support these generalizations.
So you don't agree with that thought?
I can't call myself, anyway, let me not say that. You understand what I'm saying? Certainly middle class, but that's besides the point. You are absolutely correct that there were a lot of professionals there. There were a lot of people, some of whom came on their own, because I think it is partly because the event itself, the Daily Trust Annual Dialogue, has established itself as a forum that most people want to attend because of the kinds of conversations on national issues that happen there.
Dr. Victoria admitted that is one of the most interesting and impactful conversations she has ever
attended. Yes,
and
that's former chair of Abuja Chamber of Commerce speaking. So she would have attended many events before. So that's one reason why even me, a lot of people called me. Okay, how about this? When are you doing it? I'll be coming. And so on. But we also have to understand that in Nigeria today, one of the things I've learned from experience in recent weeks is if somebody moves from point A to point B today, and you have a distance of 2 or 3 kilometers there, they have incurred considerable expense already.
Indeed.
And that's just what we have to accept nowadays. So for some people who might have wanted to come still, maybe transport issues or other things may have prevented them from coming. Otherwise, we probably could still have had more participation than we did yesterday.
Doctor, for the sake of time, it's been 21 years since the beginning of thought-provoking conversations to profile and identify problems in the Nigerian society and by extension the African continent, with an intention to improve the living conditions and of course the economies of Nigeria and by extension, of course, Africa. Doctor, it's been a lovely conversation with you. Explaining and giving insights and perspectives on all of the issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And of course, it's still your day starter here. It's Daybreak. We will be going on a break now to reconvene at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It's still good to know that you're still there watching Daybreak on Trust Television. We just ended our discussion on the 21st Daily Trust Dialogue that happened on the 25th of January. I can't believe that was like exactly a month after the Christmas. And January is gradually coming to an end. But right now...
The long month of January. The long month of January.
It's January long. I think it's pretty much, just like every other month.
Well, thankfully, January this year, I won't say it was long, but then again, it's always a time when you sit to reflect and recollect all of your activities in December and how your money left you, of course.
And I think that we are learning to cope with January? Because, you know, that's something that has been resounded a lot of times. And with the economic situation we're facing in this country, you have to plan.
But yeah, do you think that's the reason why, or it's just because of this year's team, not grief for anybody? So including January itself.
I didn't think that really helped, because the no grief for anybody came not at the beginning of January.
Well, it did.
Maybe
no, it did,
so early.
actually.
Okay,
very early in the year. And
okay.
For somebody like me, I can say categorically that I did not agree for anybody, or I did not agree for anybody.
But there was a lot of misconception around no grief for anybody.
And I think that's the reason why the police had to come out to, you know, make corrections and also make a stern statement that it might be not grief for anybody, but then again, it could mean a whole different number of things. And that's the reason why you should be careful with the kind of statements that you make. But then again, it's daybreak, like we said earlier, and I think it's time to serve you the headlines again. Nadia, do the honors.
All right, so let's start with this one that talks about the price of rice rise by 81% in 2023. And that's according to the National Bureau of Statistics.
And in power, the problem beyond our control, says the Benin Disco.
All right, and the DHQ to invite CAN chairman accusing military of aiding killings in Plateau State.
Details. The National Bureau of Statistics has disclosed that the average price of 1 kilogram of local rice increased by 81.35% on a year-on-year basis to 917.93 naira in December 2023. This indicates that the price of rice, which is a staple food item in Nigeria, has increased by 411.76 naira when compared to the corresponding price of 506.17 naira recorded in December 2022. This is contained in the Selected Food Price Watch report for December 2023, as released by the National Bureau of Statistics on Wednesday. The report stated Selected Food Price Watch for December 2023 shows that the average price of 1 kilogram of rice locally sold loose stood at 917 naira. Also, the NBS reported that the average price of 1 kilogram of tomato rose by 77.60% on a year-on-year basis from 458.42 naira in December 2022 to 814 naira 16 kobo in December 2023. It added that the average price of 1 kilogram of beans sold loose went up, brown beans particularly, went up by 48.54% on a year-on-year basis from 586 naira 14 kobo in December 2022 to 870 naira 67 kobo in December 2023. More so, the average price of 1 kilogram of beef boneless increased by 32.38% on a year-on-year basis from 2,377 naira 29 kobo in December of last year to 3,146 naira in December of 2023. On a month-on-month basis, the average price of these items increased by 3.88% in November 2023.
This is a point where, you know, a lot of Nigerians will be praying that we should not have a further increase in prices of this thing. These are staples. These are things that, you know, I can just enjoy in my house and as an ordinary Nigerian.
What this translates to, my dear, for me is more and more Nigerians are finding it difficult to put food on the table.
Exactly, and that's really, really heartbreaking. And no wonder somebody was talking about price control during the Daily Trust dialogue. Indeed. And I think we need that in the country. But moving away from that...
We need a whole lot, my dear, but then let's move away from that.
All right, moving away from that, let's take a look at electricity. Now, the Benin Electricity Distribution Company has said that the power problem being experienced by its customers is beyond its control. The BEDC told its customers in Delta, Edo, Ekiti, and Ondo states that the reduction in power hours was due to limitations in allocation from the national grid. Poor power supply being experienced nationwide was as a result of a continuous drop in the national power grid, and the Eco Electricity Distribution Company had blamed the situation on gas shortage and other issues. In its ex-handle on Thursday, the Benin Disco spoke to its customers, informing them of the reason for the low power supply. Also, the BEDC apologized for the delay in completing the maintenance of Sapelek transmission substation and Ihovo transmission substation, saying the delay was due to prevailing technical factors.
And also, the Defense Headquarters has said it would request to meet with the Chairman, Christian Association of Nigeria in Mangu local government area of Plateau State, Reverend Timothy Daluk, over his recent comment against the military. Daluk had accused the Nigerian military of supervising the killings of Christians and destruction of property in the state. In a viral video seen by our correspondent, Daluk said, "I'm here to report the situation happening in Mangu local government for the whole world to understand. What is happening in Mangu at this particular point in time? The military are the ones sending our people away for the militia to burn their houses." However, responding to an inquiry from our correspondent on Thursday, the Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, said the DHQ was in the process of reaching out to the cleric to substantiate his allegations.
And now let's move beyond the headlines and let's take a look at some packages that we have here this morning. The retired police officers in Kaduna State have again staged a peaceful protest against their continuous inclusion in the contributory pension scheme. At the protest on Thursday, they appealed to relevant authorities to address their demands. The report.
These protesters are not happy that they are part of the contributory pension scheme, which they say is subjecting them to untold hardship after retirement from the service. They are therefore demanding their exit from the system.
Under the scheme, have been facing series of difficulties ranging from non-able to feed well. Most of our children have been driven away from schools. We cannot be able to cater for their school fees. Many things. If defined benefit is a disaster, we the police retirees under the contributory pension, we are 100% ready to be under the defined benefit system.
One of the protesters, Esther Marcos, said her entitlement, which is nothing to write home about, as it cannot cater for her needs, has been worsened by the scheme.
Government to do is we want a total exit from this camp. This is wickedness. Our police retirees are dying by the day. How can you, somebody like me that is collecting a DSP in the police, is still collecting 40,000 naira for the past 4 years? 40,000, there is no increase, nothing to write home about. 40,000. With the way that things have moved, things are increasing by the day. You are still paying me the same 40,000. How do you want me to survive?
The retirees also expressed dismay with the rate at which serving police personnel are dying due to insecurity in the country and call on the federal government to address the menace. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
And elsewhere in Delta State, residents of Asaba, the Delta State capital, have advocated the need to promote the speaking of indigenous languages as well as passing them on to children as a critical element in preserving cultural identity. They lamented that several languages are going extinct, hence the need to retrieve them as they represent values that make Nigerians unique as a people. Jonathan Awanye has more.
Speaking with Trust TV, the residents harped on the need to promote indigenous languages and also devise a means of reinforcing them in the minds of the younger generation. They underscored the importance of safeguarding indigenous languages, especially those under the threat of extinction as a result of a lack of native speakers.
They must learn how to be speaking to their children in their mother tongue. When they speak to them, they try as much as they can for the children to respond in the mother tongue, because that will help them to grow in it.
An Ijaw man marrying a Calabar man. At the end of the day, you find out that the children may not understand any of the dialects except English. But if maybe they will inculcate those ideas into those children, they would take one from the other.
To a different tribe, that should not be a barrier for either the man or the wife to give the children one of the tribe. That is why I say the mother tongue is very important.
There's a need for parents to teach their children our language so that our language will not go into extinction.
While acknowledging that there is something special about the mother tongue, they said stakeholders must be intentional about drawing the world's attention to the loss of indigenous languages and the urgent need to preserve, revitalize, and celebrate them. They added that a child's first language is crucial to his or her identity, noting that sustaining such language will help the child to value his or her cultural heritage. Jonathan Awaye, Trust TV News, Asaba.
We have a lot of people on that table.
Stakeholders in the education sector have called on the government at all levels to address the menace of insecurity across the nation in order to improve learning among Nigerians, especially children. They made the call on the sidelines of the 2024 International Day of Education by the United Nations, which marked on the 24th of January every year. Hamid Oyegbade reports.
The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 24th January as International Day of Education, given the role of education in achieving peace and development. Meanwhile, the Sustainable Development Goal 4 focuses on quality education to ensure that every child, adolescent and adult has the opportunity to acquire knowledge and skills needed for a life of dignity and purpose. But this might just be a mirage unless government put necessary measures in place to ensure safety of learners in schools across the country.
Government should provide adequate security for the students, clearing of bushes, fencing the school premises so that to make the school a better place to study.
We want government to provide adequate security so that students will not be afraid of going to schools.
The national president of National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools of Nigeria, Yomi Otubela, harped on the need for synergy between security agencies and proprietors of both public and private schools in Nigeria to make schools safe and secured.
So we had asked all these schools to register their school with this police station and form a relationship where they could share intelligence with the police from time to time, exchange phone numbers of key officers of these police stations and police posts. We also invited security officers to speak and enlighten our members.
Osun State government has put various activities in place to ensure that our schools are safe. Part of the measures that we put in place is the presence of Peace Corps in our schools.
With the theme, Learning for Lasting Peace, nations commemorate the International Day of Education and work to attain SDG 4 in order to guarantee a better future for the next generation. Hamid Oyegbade, Trust TV News, Osogbo.
That's the right amount of packages that we have for you this morning. We'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll take a look at some selected national dailies. Stay with us.
Why did you develop this reputation as somebody who is difficult to work with?
I will tell the truth. No matter whose ox is gored, I will say exactly how it is.
This is where I actually sympathize with commissioners of nowadays. Where a commissioner sometimes is just a picture. You find somebody, even a cleaner and the governor's wife, can interfere with their abilities.
Even the ministers, there are very many who respected me simply because I never complained about them. I never went to ask for a favor. Never.
So none of that is happened?
Nothing.
But if it hasn't happened, do you have hope that now another government coming in?
There is no hope.
So you've given up on politics?
I've given up. It's gone, it's gone.
Retrenchment from work is the most hated thing by unions. It's loss of job means that is loss of life. In fact, for civil servants at that time.
Nigeria's economy, Nigeria's security, Nigeria's intelligence. This is what the materials we were handling. And I thought government would be very interested.
The reasons why you adopted federalism is not because of finesse, not because you like it. It's because of its functional utility.
Welcome back. It's still Daybreak on Trust TV. And of course, this is that segment where we get to review the front pages of national dailies. And as customary, I have a copy of the Daily Trust with me. On the front page, lead story there says, Daily Trust Dialogue. Masses are losers of Tinubu's reforms. That's according to Labour. A couple of riders underneath says, federal government running prodigal economy. President desirous of making life better for all. That's according to the Information Minister. Now is the time to interrogate renewed hope agenda, according to Kabiru Yusuf, the chairman of the board of the Media Trust Group. And there should be consequences for failure, according to Shamsuddin Usman, a former Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Of course, federal government must listen to citizens' perspectives, according to Jega, the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Other stories there say police vigilante gunned down kidnapper, rescue 14 victims in the FCT. Also, $3.3 billion emergency loan. You owe Nigerians explanation, Atiku tells Tinubu. Our story is on page 5. Woman jailed 7 years for promoting prostitution. Our story is on page 12. We see a pictorial there of the Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, Mohammed Bello Koko, receiving the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Customs Service, Adewale Bashir, at the NPA headquarters in Marina. Of course, the meeting focused on deepening collaboration towards improving efficiency, enhancing speed of cargo clearance to promote competitiveness. At the top of the page, we see Gaza war, ICJ to deliver order on South Africa's application today. Catch that story on page 4. Also, Northern youths demand Kayamo CBN governor sack over relocation of agencies. Read more on that story on page 4. And finally, attempted cattle rustling, major cause of fresh plateau crisis. That's according to the military, and that story is captured on page 3 of the Daily Trust. That's it for the Daily Trust today.
And now let's move on to the Nation's newspaper. We'll take this one that says, government labor minimum wage talks for March. All right, page 4 has details of that story. And then why Supreme Court affirmed Fubara Kefas Aliyu victorious. Page 4 has details. Aida Tiwat set to inaugurate at Delami, and presidency tackles Atiku over claim on NNPC's $3.3 billion loan. Page 5 and page 4. 4 and 5 has details of those stories. And you see a pictorial here of different royal fathers at a town hall meeting. You can get details of that. And then beneath that, we have power supply worsens as generation drops to 3,134 megawatt. Riders attached to the story says TCM blames gas shortage. 30 megawatts coming from Kashimbila, and then Enugu community stalls multi-billion naira power project. Start reading from the front page and then continue on page 3. Oinoi of Ibiraland, Tijani Anaje installed. Page 7 has details. And Lagos to float airline build airport in Lekki. Page 3 has details of that story. That's about the stories we'll be taking from the front page of The Nation this morning.
And to The Guardian, on ease of doing business, how checkpoints, bad roads block trade, spike inflation. That's the big story on The Guardian. It's on page 4, 5, and 6. Terrorists kill Imam, 2 others abduct 32 in Katsina. That story is on the news page, number 30. Also, Sanusi backs relocation of CBN departments to Lagos. Catch that story on page 3. Takeaway packs. Lagos maintains stance on styrofoam ban, gives 3 weeks moratorium. Besides that, Atiku queries $3.3 billion emergency loan. Underneath that, we see Ibadan explosion. Federal government gives security agencies 2 weeks to review report. NLC seeks review of Tinubu's policies over unpleasant outcomes. And also, Nigeria needs ambitious fiscal reform to achieve sustainable 3.1% growth. That story is on the business page of The Guardian. And that's some of the stories on the front page of The Guardian this morning.
Now we're headed straight to this Nigeria. Subsidy removal increases FAC disbursement by 29% to 15.1 trillion naira in 2023. Get details on page 19. And boldly screaming for attention here is a kicker with insecurity. Military deploys special forces in trouble spots, says DHQ. And the writer says the armed forces will destroy the cancer of terrorism that is ravaging our country. Troops neutralize 94 terrorists, apprehend 214 in 1 week. Get details of that on page 4. Supreme Court affirms election of Taraba, Sokoto, Rivers governors. Page 14 has details. And over 50% poultry farms shut down in 2023. That's coming from the association. Interesting one there. Get details of that on page 18. And 10 killed, 10 houses razed down in Plateau attack. Police disclose. Page 15 has details of that very heartbreaking story. And then we have a victory of former Nigerian basketball international Samu Guche drilling the students during the opening of Abuja Metro High School basketball. All right, get details of that. And then lastly, we have federal government charges 5 Fubara loyalists for burning Rivers Assembly, remanded in Kuje prison. Wow. Page 5 has details of that story.
That's an interesting story. However, on the Nigerian Tribune this morning, the lead story there says, review your policies to reduce hardship. NLC tells Tinubu, says listening to World Bank, IMF has never helped the country. Wants federal government to expedite process of negotiating new minimum wage. Government to discuss with Labour in March. That's according to the Information Minister. Of course, also, Nigeria spent 14.8 trillion naira on security in 9 years. That's according to PwC. Lists 7 trends that will shape Nigeria's economy in 2024. Permanent solution to insecurity is here, according to Northern leaders. That story is on page 28 if you want to know what the permanent solutions are. Ijaw Youth Council threatens to shut down Shell operation as Clark alleges plot to colonize Ijaws and others. Stories on page 4. Also, Southwest PDP now fully united. Makinde, other party leaders say. Oyo, Osun governors jointly attend party zonal meeting for the first time. Ajishafe, now Southwest chairman. Also, Lagos malls investment in airline operations. Sanwo-Olu renders stewardship in town hall meeting. Below the masthead, we see some other stories, which includes Ondo Assembly confirms Adelami as deputy governor. Ganduje woos Kanu governor to join APC. That's an interesting headline. Read more on that on page 3. Also, Supreme Court affirms Sokoto, Rivers, Taraba State Governor's election. And atop the page, we see Atiku raises 5 questions over NNPCL's $3.3 billion emergency loan. Says federal government may repay $12 billion. That story is on page 12. And finally, Plateau killings. Police arrest 17 reps speaker to meet Tinubu. Don't take laws into your hand. governor warns. That story is on page 26. Well, these are some of the stories scattered across the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, the first news will be our last stop, and it seems to be as busy as the Nigerian Tribune. But we'll start with this one that says, Ondo Assembly confirms Akeredolu's kinsman as deputy governor. And Fashua applauds appointment. Edo gubernatorial, nobody can intimidate me, says Deputy Governor Shuaibu. Get details of that in the first newspaper. And then the customs intercept cocaine and arms worth 4 billion naira. Court remands Fubara's loyalists over Rivers Assembly explosion. DPO rejects bribe, arrest bandit in Kaduna hotel. CBN, fan relocation, you risk losing northern support. Kasina elders want Tinubu. Interesting one there. And largely, that's boldly captioned here. Speak up on NNPCL's $3.3 billion loan deal. Atiku challenges Tinubu, alleges deal is shady. Interest amounts to $7 billion. Claims SPV incorporated in Bahamas notorious for Paradise Papers scandal driving deal. Wow. Get details of that in the first news. Supreme Court affirms election victories of Taraba, Sokoto, and Rivers governors. Another story says court stops IGP from arresting EFCC chairman, vacates contempt order. And on African Cup of Nations, which seems to be very interesting to me, Tinubu not impressed with your performance. Minister tells Super Eagles players. All right, let's see what happens with Cameroon in the coming days. Oh, tomorrow, that's the date. And then on Plateau, 16 victims of fresh mango crisis buried. As a DHQ moves to invite CAN chairman for accusing military of aiding killings. And the other writer says rep speaker to meet Tinubu on Plateau killings. And the last story, dump NNPP, defect to APC, Ganduje tells Yusuf and supporters.
Well,
quite
a lot of stories across the front pages of Nigeria's national dailies, and to do justice in terms of 7 perspectives and also breaking down some of these stories, we have joining us in the studio now Emmanuel Osemeka. He's a public affairs commentator. Welcome, Mr. Emmanuel.
Thank you. Good morning and Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year indeed. So let's start perhaps the conversation with this one on the front page of the Daily Trust, and of course was replicated across the other national dailies. It says $3.3 billion emergency loan. Your own Nigerians explanation, Atiku tells Tinubu. So it seems like we're back at it again.
Absolutely. I mean, you see, there's no love lost between the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and of course, he's a political friend and ally of many
You call them
decades.
allies or adversaries?
Well, they've been allies for many years. They were in the SDP of the 92 days.
Some said they were in the same political school.
They've been in the same political school for many decades. They're friends, actually. Yes, the two of them wanted to be president. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has always wanted to be the #1 citizen of Nigeria.
Just as
from the 90s. He stepped down for what's his name? The guy for Abiola.
MQ.
Yeah, for MQ Abiola. Yeah. As far back as 1992, 93 elections. And at the time, he was the political leader of the People's Democratic Movement,
the PDM,
which was the political movement of the late Shehu Musa, General Shehu Musa Yaradua. So,
who some have attributed to being his political god.
Yes, I mean, you can't take it away from they are from the same place and Atiku. So, if you take a cursory look at the Tinubu's political journey as well, you will see Atiku right beside him and all that. The famous, what do you call it? What's the company again?
Intel.
Tinubu has about 5% in shares in that intel at the time. So they've been friends. They've been political allies, business partners and all that. So there's no love lost between the two of them. So when you see this, you will know clearly that Atiku is not new to politics and governance. So he has his tentacles left and right. If you recall, this loan, 3.3 billion loan, was initially mooted sometime last year when the dollar began to spiral. And the idea then was that you have to find a way to stabilize the currency. And one of the drivers of the incessant increase is the lack of inflow. Yes, if you look at 2013 or 2014, Nigeria went as high as having on annual basis about $103 billion annually. And it dropped to the lowest in 2022 to $14 billion. So you can see the gap. So that's one of the reasons why we are not able to
meet up with our obligations.
Exactly. So the challenge first is, as long as you wake up every day, you have obligations. So why not take care of the previous ones so that you can stabilize the system and create room for more investment? Because as long as you are not able to meet your obligations, investors will run away. I mean, look at Guinness. Guinness lost about 5 billion and so many other companies like that. So you don't want capital flight. You want companies to come in and invest, and the more investment you get, the better you become and the better your reserve, and you're able to defend the currency. So I believe that's one of the things that was supposed to be. But of course, the initial plan was to borrow the money and pay using crude. But I think
I was getting to that.
Yes, I think they've deviated from that and a different. So either, because what was said was that the lenders wanted to get direct off-takers for the crude, so that they can get the money. Unfortunately, if you are not a player in the crude industry, it's very difficult to sell. So they now had to broker a different deal. And of course, it looks like, from what Atiku has said, that it's probably going to cost us another 7 billion on interest, which I don't think is a wise decision. But
anyway, a lot of people might interpret this in a different way. And isn't this what we wanted, the opposition holding the government accountable? Isn't this a good thing?
No, absolutely. What the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has done is clearly what an opposition political party should do. However, I also think he could have also profiled what he would have done if he was the president. Because it's not enough to say, oh, come clean. It's more like trying to say, I know what you guys are doing, I'm watching you. That's not what we want.
We want recommendations.
What we want is, look, you borrowed 3.3 billion to do this. At the end of the day, you're going to pay 12 billion for 3.3 billion dollars. If I was the president, this is what I would have done. This would have been the outcome.
Exactly.
We've seen that with a lot of politicians, especially those vying for political positions. They become magicians.
But then again, does it make
overnight
sense?
And proffering solutions that some people have termed to be unrealistic.
It's the fact that we are used to hearing politicians touting or postulating ideas does not mean that if they become, it will not work. There are clear policies that if you follow through, it will work. Let me give you a classical example. There's nothing new in governance today. There are countries that have been in Nigeria's current situation and they got out of it. So that's a model you can pick. If you go for your master's degree program or your PhD program, or you go for any of these high level courses, what you look at is actually models. You look at what model worked. When COVID-19 came, how did they get the vaccines? They picked the model of the HIV. It was the HIV antiretroviral model that they used and turned it around specifically for the viral loads that they were seeing from the people who were dying from COVID-19. So the world is about models. So IMF, I will advise Nigeria to go in a particular direction to achieve a specific end that benefits IMF and World Bank and, of course, the owners, the people who dictate for them. That's why it will be foolhardy for any government to take the advice of IMF They are never, the IMF was not set up to help Africa grow. IMF was set up to perpetuate Africa in poverty. And that's the truth. You can go check it out. So the reality is, every politician who has offered himself to rule Nigeria and was unable to get there, what you owe Nigerians is to offer us alternatives. This is what I would have done, and this is so it deepens our democracy, it deepens our knowledge, it deepens even the students in tertiary institutions will take a cue from some of the postulations you have. And I think there are a few of them that I've been. I look at Professor Mahmoud Jega. He's been churning out a lot of things these days, a lot of intellectual papers. Look at Professor Patu Tommy. He's been very consistent in his ideas and all that. Look at P2B. He's been doing so. Articles likewise. So I don't think because somebody ran for office and couldn't make it, therefore, if he brings up an idea, I think that's what they should do.
Well, Mr. Emmanuel, while all of this is happening, the nation has it that power supply worsens as generation drops to 3,134 megawatts. I came specifically to this because I saw you shake your head in the activity when this headline was read out.
It's disappointing, honestly. We've spent trillions of naira. In fact, not spent, we've thrown away trillions of naira, for just to generate, transmit and distribute electricity. Unfortunately, it's become a vicious circle. Electricity generation, transmission and distribution is now looking like rocket science. Even North Korea, that is supposedly under heavy sanction for the past 50 years, they have rockets flying all over the place. So which means they've crossed the threshold of the basics. The people might be poor because of lack of trade and access to quite a lot of things. But for a country like Nigeria to be struggling with electricity generation, transmission and distribution, I'm short of words. It's simple corruption. There's no two ways about it.
Okay, so Nigerians are trying to juxtapose the relationship between power generation and also the selling of the 5 power plants that's going to generate about over $1 billion. And, they're saying that this could actually leave in the power sector, not so vacant, and then help in generation. So how does this even fit? Because the ordinary Nigerian will be asking you, why are we selling our power plants when we have power generation problem in the country? So
most often when you listen to experts or the minister of government people, the excuse usually is that one of the challenges we have is efficiency in running the power system, power infrastructure and all that. But I would say clearly that, I grew up in Nigeria where we had the up-NEPA syndrome. I think the up-NEPA days was better. Syndrome. I think the up-NEPA days was better. Well, one of the things, somebody made a joke and said, went from up-NEPA to power holding. So they held the power. They held the power. So they've refused to release the power. That, so it's a joke, but when you look critically, you see that what has happened over time is that people have abdicated responsibilities and pushed blames on other people. Don't forget, our former chief of staff went to Germany on a Siemens deal to be able to solve the transmission issue, because the way they claimed was that the problem we had was not generation, that the problem we had was transmission. Now he went to Germany, and unfortunately that trip cost him his life. We've had monies being expended left and right, brought in GE, General Electrics, to come and do the yeoman's job. Unfortunately, we still haven't gotten the results that we desire. We had Siemens come in here for more than 6 years or 7 years to do supposedly yeoman's job, and still it's not being done. We've privatized the distribution companies. We have 6 or thereabouts.
I think we privatized a large part of the value chain.
The value chain. So the challenge of always, which government have said, is that government has no business in business because they don't have the capacity or the efficiency to do business. Now is in the hands of the private sector. The story is that, that the privatization was not properly done. In Nigeria, it's always excuse upon excuse upon excuse. Why? Because we run a system that has no consequence for wrongdoing. The challenge with Nigeria from beginning to end across all sectors is failure to punish people for wrongdoing.
Impunity.
Clearly, we have a government that woke up one day and said they are changing the currency. For whatever it is worth, at the time the explanation sounded nice. But during the implementation, they messed it up. Nobody is being punished for it. I mean, you can say that, oh, the former governor of CBN he's been charged for a different set of things.
Not for that.
Not for that. You are in a country where somebody woke up one day and began to steal crude oil. We can't find the people that steal crude oil in ships. And things continue to spiral. We run a country where the former CBN governor, the 14th Emir of Kano, clearly said that a young man in the last administration, who is less than 30 years, owns 2 private jets. Before he got into the last administration, he didn't have a job. He was selling recharge card. That's the country where we are. So that's why you see that when they come up and say, oh, this is the problem, it's a lie.
I think that same young man his name was mentioned as one of the architects of
the currency redesign and the rest of them. And we are here, we're watching. The president came up and removed subsidy with no plans. And the effect of subsidy was not even thought out. The effect of that subsidy removal will hit Nigeria. If you look at what the NESG came up with, you will see that they've segmented the economic recovery process into 4 stages. We're going to be here for another 5 years.
On this issue.
It's going to be worse in the next 2 years. This year and next year is going to be horrible.
But then again, the president and by extension the current administration has been talking so big on the Dangote refinery, the Port Harcourt refinery coming on stream. A lot of Nigerians are actually forgetting that you might not even see petrol at this moment, probably diesel and aviation fuel, but not petrol, which means the problem still persists.
The problem persists. The challenge is that we've thrown efficiency, what's the word now? We've sacrificed efficiency on the altar of political patronage. How do you get efficiency? You get efficiency by putting the right mix, right set of people in the right places. If you look at what the Nigerian Economic Summit Group segmented, and if you listen carefully, you will hear the Minister of Finance, the CBN governor, a lot of them talk about that we are currently in what they call stabilization period. The Tinubu's economic policy today on economic recovery is stabilization, consolidation, and what's the other one now? Acceleration. There's one before acceleration. Acceleration comes in about 6 or 7 years' time. And if you look at the stabilization and the consolidation, they are all red. You need to, for you to get Nigeria off this doldrum, you need to get foreign direct investment or public-private investment to the tune where Nigeria will make a minimum of $120 billion annually.
But how do we try doing that?
Today we are doing less than $10 billion annually.
How do we now, is there a hypodermic needle, for example, that you could use to stimulate this development? Because we know a bulk of this has to come from production.
I'm not a politician, so I might not be able to postulate a lot. But as a statistician, as a trained statistician, there are clear low-hanging fruits. But you see, the government, the politicians are not interested in low-hanging fruits.
That's where political will comes in.
Yes, so there are clear low-hanging fruits. So you have a debt in foreign direct investment. So why do you have a debt in foreign direct investment? Lack of direction, lack of confidence. The Nigerian entrepreneurs are closing shops because they lack confidence in the system. How do you build confidence in the system? There is one of the things, if you look at what The Nigerian Economic Summit Group clearly brought out all the facts.
It seemed like it was quite comprehensive.
It was very comprehensive. If you take a look at what they brought out, you will clearly see where the challenge is. So, for example, multiple taxation, okay? Multiple agency regulations, certification. Okay, let me give you a classical example. There is a rule or procedures for capital importation. But in Nigeria today, there is no clear procedures for capital exportation. Or these are very minute things.
What comes to my mind is that it makes it quite easy for the importers and quite difficult for those who are even seeking to get the foreign direct.
That's the point. So there's a whole lot of policy misdirection. There's a lot of policy confusion. So even the private sector is confused as to where the government is going. The government says this, but when you look, you see a different thing entirely. The bribery level for you to get approval for the simplest things is so complex and confusing. The police will stop you on the road for the most mundane things and you must bribe.
What about getting passports to travel?
So there are so many things that have become so complex in Nigeria, made worse from the last administration and getting more confused with this administration.
It's getting compounded.
So unfortunately, I don't know their plans. I'm not seeing probably what they are seeing, but with what I'm seeing, I've not seen the gleam of light yet.
Okay, and one would wonder, a country who is diversifying into the usage of gas more because of the removal of first subsidies, talking about shortage of gas for transmission or generation of power. I'm seeing how that is going to work out. But your thoughts on African Cup of Nations? The president said they're not happy with the performance of the Super Eagles. What do you think will happen tomorrow when we meet Cameroon?
Nigeria will beat Cameroon, not because of president.
I like that optimism.
That
spoken like a true patriotic.
No, Nigeria will beat Cameroon.
But you are sounding like
Osimhen will score.
For me, Cameroon, watch out. It's going to be a field day.
No, Osimhen will score. Osimhen will break the deadlock tomorrow.
Serious beatings. Expected.
I think it's going to be like 2-0,
Yeah, specific predictions. I like that. But then again,
I'm a man of faith.
Yeah.
On the Tribune, review your policies to reduce hardship. NLC tells Tinubu, says listening to World Bank, IMF has never helped the country. Wants federal government to expedite process of negotiating new minimum wage. Government to discuss with Labour in March. Mr. Osemeka, I know you've spoken about some of these things, especially the IMF and then the lack of policy direction and coordination. But Nigerians will continue to bear the brunt of all of this. For example, the fuel price has increased. Inflation is now roughly around 29%, and salaries
it's actually 31%. Yeah,
31%. Salaries are what it is.
30,000.
So the inflation at this point is seeming like a point.
I don't know, honestly. Like someone was saying that the Japa syndrome, is not the solution. And I asked the person, what is
the solution?
It's okay to accuse, the brain drain and the Japa syndrome. It's not even easy to Japa in the first place.
True.
It's not.
Because flight tickets now cost around 2.5 million.
You're talking about flight ticket. You're talking about cost of living. When you relocate from Abuja
but you will travel
Kogi.
first.
No, relocate from Abuja to Kogi.
Okay.
Or relocate from Abuja to Lagos.
So
That's Japa from Abuja.
Yes.
Within Nigeria.
Japa is not easy. I moved from Abuja to Maiduguri some time back. And I knew how difficult it was in the first place. First, you're in a place where you've never been before, or maybe you've been there, but you've never really lived. There's a difference between you're visiting and that you're coming to live. So you become part of that place. So the way you behave is now different because culturally you have to adapt. You have to change a lot of things. Your dressing has to change. Your pattern of life has to change, and all that. You have to. So if there are insecurities there, you have to brace yourself for whatever you're going to see. If there is cold, you have to brace yourself. Like in Borno today now, you have to wear winter jacket. That's the truth in Nigeria. Indeed. But people don't know that you can go to some part of Nigeria and wear serious winter jacket, but they don't get it. So we have our own winter here. But my take is this. The federal government, maybe in a bid to show that they are a departure from the previous administration churned out a lot of policies that is affecting the workers. What they need to do, first of all, increase the minimum wage immediately. The National Assembly has to make that law immediately to increase the minimum wage. Labour is asking for 200 or 250. Meet them somewhere. Find a way around this thing. Ramp up production. It's all about production, production, production. That's the only way you can get out of this mess.
I think we have to wait till March before that
production,
starts.
production. And that's the most we can take on the Daybreak this morning. Emmanuel Semeka, Public Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for the perspectives.
Thank you,
and of course, for the optimism that Nigeria is going to thrash Cameroon. Watch out. From me, it's thank you very much for watching the program and have a lovely weekend. I'm Sagir Ibrahim.
I remember that if you missed any of the actions on the Daybreak program this morning, head to our YouTube page where it's streaming live at the moment. And more actions and threes and also discussion around the African Cup of Nations comes up at the top of the hour on 360 Sports. Stay with us. My name is Martia Umar. Have a lovely